Welcome to Porch Talks. Thanks for joining me on this journey toward greater emotional and spiritual well being. I want to share with you something that came to me in my meditations recently, and the phrase was this: when I make peace with others, I make peace in my heart with God. When I make peace in my heart with my family, I make peace in my heart with God. When I make peace in my heart with my employer, I make peace in my heart with God. When I make peace in my heart with my parents, I make peace in my heart with God. So each of these phrases were personal to me in terms of the stories that I may carry or experiences I have had in the context of each of these phrases, and that they would trigger things in me, like maybe shame or guilt or anger or frustration, disappointment, maybe feelings of abandonment or judgment and criticism. And, and if those things are alive in me, triggered in me, then the peace that I want to experience in my life arises as a barrier to that peace that I carry in my heart, in my experience of spirit or my creator or source energy or God. So these triggers, as they relate to the people in our lives and the experiences and stories and events in our lives that have happened to us, um, they they create a barrier between me and my relationship with my own higher self or the spirit. And what I wanted to talk about today was how to notice if those stories are falling away or resolving and healing. What experience would we have inside to these triggers that keep us separated from who we truly really are as manifestations or emanations or receptacles of spirit itself? And the way I wanted to chat about this was how I noticed when I said one of those statements and I thought about the triggering stories inside of it, as I provided, as the trigger arose, I would provide, believe it or not, oxygen to the feeling, and it would de-intensify, which said, let's say, with an experience of a family member and feelings of frustration or dissatisfaction were arising, I would breathe deeply as I experienced that story or that trigger inside myself. And literally, the oxygen will wash out those those chemicals that create intense emotional, inflamed energy, and I can return more quickly to an experience of well being. So I tell myself the story like something that a family member wants to do for me or offer to me for help, and I carry stories of helplessness or embarrassment or shame about that, or dependence, and maybe I want to feel more independent in that situation. It's triggering frustration and dissatisfaction in some way. As I contemplated it, I just slowed down how I was breathing as I thought about what was arising inside. It felt very dissatisfying, and I was averse to communicating with the family member because I had all this story about how I'd have to justify, explain, face embarrassment, try to find my own self-worth in the conversation. I was just in a tizzy about that. And I just used my breathing to allow oxygen to get into and wash out those chemicals that are triggered by the story I'm telling myself about that relationship. And so when those chemicals are washed out and we can return to allowing chemicals for well-being enter into the body, like dopamine and serotonin and those wonderful endorphins, then we are more in an open state of receiving and allowing others to be just who they are without the story. And that openness, that kind of allowing and accepting things as they are, my experience has been it opens the heart to receive the inspiration of Spirit and see with the eyes of God that other person. And when I began to do that, I noticed when I thought about having that communication with that parent or that family member on the phone, all the intensity that was related to that thought before had disappeared, and it just became a conversation. And it also allowed Spirit to enter into my actions and the conversation itself for the highest good. And it turned out to be, beyond expectation, a wonderful connection with that family member. It did. So, in two ways: emotionally, having greater well-being by releasing the intensity of the feelings around the trigger, and spiritually, by coming to a space of just allowing others to be who they are and just getting in touch with who I am and the way I want to show up. Open my heart to allow Spirit to come into the conversation and let it progress for the greatest good of all of us, are two things that I wanted to offer today from the saying that I got: when I have peace in my heart with others, I have peace in my heart with God. Thank you for joining me today in this conversation. And if you like these videos, I invite you to subscribe to my channel. And I'll talk to you again soon. Thank you.